Chris Christie. He was referring, of course, to former President Trump. Also went to a police station in New York yesterday, complained again about the rigged election. You gave a major speech at the Reagan Library this week where you said it was time to face the realities of the 2020 election, renounce the conspiracy theorists and the truth deniers. So you're in a collision course with former President Trump.
No, I'm on a course to try to make sure that my party remains rather relevant in the political conversation in this country.
Maybe it becomes. Aren't majority? You're seeing more and more Republicans who are now saying they're buying in to the conspiracy theorists.
In the end, I do think that it's moving in the other direction. I mean, I think it'll continue to move in the other direction. And what that speech was all about was to repeat what I said with you on election night. You know, at 2:30 a.m. on election night, when the president made the speech that he made, President Trump made the speech that he made, I said it was unfounded and that there was no evidence of anything like what he was talking about, and he needed to stop. And I've
since then, it's taken hold among Republicans.
It's taken hold among some Republicans, George. But I think what you're seeing over the course of time as this continues to move past election night and the emotion of an election is that more and more people are saying that that's not true. And by the way, it's also incumbent upon all of us in the party who don't believe it's true to speak out. Because you're not going to convince everybody overnight. The same way we're having the conversation about vaccines, and you're not going to convince certain people of certain things. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with friends of mine who are smart, good people who aren't vaccinated.
So are you getting blowback?
I mean, listen, a little bit, but much more praise than blowback for the speech. And so, you know, but in the end, that's not why I gave the speech, to either get praise or worry about blowback. You say what you believe. That's what I try to do here every week when I'm on. And I said what I believed on Thursday night, and it's what I'm going to continue to believe.
I just think for 4 years, we watch Republicans either be silent or be complicit in the building of the monster that is Trump. And even post-Trump, there are still Republicans who are bolstering him, supporting him. So I feel like too little, too late. The reality is real leadership is stepping up to the man at the time he was in the seat and saying that we won't budge. And there was none of that. And unfortunately, I don't know what the future of the Republican Party is. There's so many folks who are now swinging closely. We think about the 47 states that have legislation trying to keep people from voting based on the big lie that we know was not true. We think about January 6th and the insurrection that happened on the structure of democracy itself and democracy. And there are Republicans who don't want to have an investigation into that. So this Republican Party is way far gone, and unfortunately, too little, too late.
Hold on, I want to get another Republican perspective here from Sarah ISGUR. You know, they're seeing debate there. Chris believes the party's over time moving in his direction. Yvette disagrees.
I think that perhaps we will finally see what we didn't get to see in 2016, where there were 17 candidates, nobody dropped out so that you could have the one-on-one versus Donald Trump. Perhaps it looks like Donald Trump is going to run again. We're certainly told that by all of his advisors and by all accounts from him. If it is Chris Christie versus Donald Trump in the Republican primary, Republicans will have a choice. And certainly Donald Trump is in some ways at his weakest that he's been since he left the White House, and in other ways, certainly what he has said and Trumpism has picked up within the party. It will be up to Governor Christie to make the case that there is somewhere else to go. But I do think if Trump runs, he may be alone in that lane, and that could be helpful.
I'm sorry. Republican Party, they made their choice.
Yes.
And I appreciate the speech, Governor, but the reality is this. You have to admit, Sarah, you have to admit the role that you played in putting the person in leadership who is driving conspiracy theories. It's one thing to condemn them after the fact, but you have to own up to the role that you played in putting the person in power. The time
we both ran campaigns against
No. Let me finish.
First off, I don't have to admit, First off, I don't have to admit anything to you.
Can I finish?
First off, I don't have to admit to you. And second, I ran against Donald Trump in 2016.
You also coached him for debate, sir.
You ran against, here's the deal, you ran against him. But when a person has principles, morals, and values, they do not support them even if you lose. And what they say is, I choose patriotism and the country over party and power. And the problem was too many Republicans chose power in riding with Donald Trump as opposed to patriotism in America.
I'll sleep fine tonight with you judging my morals.
Well, guess what? As a voter, as a voter who has 13 nieces and nephews, what I also want to see in America are Republicans and Democrats who have the guts to stand stand up to narcissists, to folks who lie, to folks who sit here and lead a country in the wrong direction. And what that man has unleashed on this country, any Republican who stood with him has to own it and accept the role that they played.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I'll accept the role that I played in the 2016 election running against him, and I'll accept the role...
Let him finish his point now. Let him finish his point.
And I'll accept the role that I played in my belief that Hillary Clinton was not the right person to be president. We all get to make choices, Roland, in this democracy. I made my choice. I'm on record of my choice, and I'm not walking away from my choice. But it does not preclude me from being able to be critical when the person that I did support does things that I am against. And so this false choice that you're trying to set up,
Is that false?
It's a false choice, and one that the American people are not going to buy either.
Roland, let me just press one other point. Right now, I would argue that the fact that so many Americans can't buy into simple facts is probably the biggest existential threat we face to our democracy. So when somebody speaks up for that, isn't it something to be praised?
Facts are critically important, but again, when you support someone who said fake news, when you were truthful and then push that, then when you have the networks and the conservative radio talk show hosts, that whole echo chamber driving that's the problem. I am a native of Texas who is still registered there, and I am dealing with Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick, who is consistently lying and making things up, and you're dealing with that. I'm dealing with people who are changing textbooks, well, here's the deal. I have a very basic principle since I've been a journalist. If you do good, I'll talk about you. If you do bad, I'll talk about you. At the end of the day, I'll talk about you. And somebody has to say what others are afraid to say.
Sarah, you get the last word.
If you want to persuade the half the country that voted for Donald Trump in 2016 to move to your side, then you've got to stop villainizing them. You've got to stop having these conversations where everyone who is not with you is against you. And when someone says that Donald Trump did something wrong, you may want to consider praising that and trying to use that to persuade the people who are not going to be persuaded by what you
That is going to have to be the last word. This debate could obviously continue. I'm sure it will in coming weeks.